Did you know that Seattle, Washington is actually named after a Native American chief? During his lifetime, Chief Seattle stated, "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children." Hi, my name is Aaron Probst, and today I will be presenting alongside Dylan and Habtamu on CO2 emissions and why you should ride your bike and or walk to work. Currently, the United States stands at number 2 in carbon emission output of the world. As you can see in the right-hand side on that pie chart, there's a blue section that covers about 15% of the area. That's for the United States. Taking a backseat only to China, the United States is producing a whopping 5.41 GT of carbon emissions. So, what is 5.41 GT anyway? A GT stands for gigaton, and 1 gigaton is the equivalent of 1 billion metric tons. While 1 ton is the equivalent of about 2,000 pounds, this would mean that 5.41 gigatons is the equivalent of 1,082,000,000,000 pounds of CO2 that's put into the atmosphere. In terms of pachyderms, 5.41 gigatons is the equivalent of 772,857,142.857 elephants. And these aren't lightweight elephants either. These are the African bush elephants, which weigh up to 7 tons or 14,000 pounds. That's a lot of elephants and even more CO2. So now that we know how much of the carbon emissions output of the world is from the United States, how much within the United States is put out from cars by themselves. So in 2018, according to the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States, it was recorded that 28.2% of carbon emissions in the United States was due to transportation, or the cars that we drive. So they go on to state that this is the largest contributor to carbon emissions in the United States. Let's look at your vehicle by itself now. A 2020 vehicle, assuming it gets approximately 22 miles to the gallon and you only drive it 11,500 miles in a year, that will mean it's putting out about 4.6 metric tons of CO2 per year. This means that every year your car is putting out twice its own weight in carbon dioxide every year. And if you drive more, that means it's putting out more. If you drive less, it's putting out a little bit less as well. But to put this into perspective, there are 273.6 million United States vehicles registered as of 2018. And so that calculated out is approximately 1,258.56 million metric tons of CO2 put out each year by the United States. And this is assuming that your car is getting pretty good gas mileage and it's a generally new car. What about those with electric vehicles, people with Teslas, things like that? They say, oh, I'm going completely green, I have 0 emissions. And to an extent, that's true, but only to an extent. You see, Tesla does not emit any tailpipe emissions like other gasoline-powered or diesel-powered cars do. However, the carbon emissions that it takes to get the electricity to your door, to your outlet, and it ultimately into your car does take a toll on the environment. Though it be much less than a standard car, there is still a factor there. So in the specific zip code of 84003 in Utah, the Tesla Model 3 standard range from 2020 requires 80 grams of CO2 emission per mile that it's driven. This means 21,040 grams of CO2 is emitted for every time that you charge your car. Not as clean as you thought, right? So what are the effects of CO2 anyway? For humans, CO2 causes dizziness, it causes convulsions, it causes headaches and tiredness and difficulty breathing from lack of oxygen, and it's definitely not healthy for us in large quantities. For the environment, CO2 is a greenhouse gas, which means it gets trapped into the atmosphere, and as it moves, it creates heat in the environment, and it slowly melts ice caps, causing oceans to rise and environments to die out, and as well as species that thrive in colder weather. So, the big question is, what is the solution to all of this? This is where we'll get into the biking and walking to work. And I'll let Dylan and Hoptamu take care of that. Thank you for your time. Let's try that.